So this is our second of 3 mayor candidate forums that we're having here at Cedar Rapids West Rotary this month. And for any of you that don't recall, the election will be coming up on November 7th. So that'll be for everybody in Lynn County, right? But these are just City of Cedar Rapids mayor candidates that we're having. As we did last time, each candidate will have 5 minutes at the beginning to share their thoughts with our audience today. And we, again, drew lots. So for the order in which they'll go. And then following their opening comments, we'll take questions from the audience. And we'll try to field as many questions as possible, which means that we'll ask the candidates to be brief in their responses. So as we did last time, I think good ground rules for this type of conversation and discussion are the Rotary four-way test. So why don't we all stand and say the Rotary four-way test again? We don't say the numbers, we just say what each of the tests is. So of the things we think, say, or do, is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned? With that, I'm going to introduce our first candidate, Lemmy Tillahoon. Lemmy immigrated with his family to Cedar Rapids from Ethiopia 20 years ago. Lemmy graduated from Washington High School and Coe College. He spent 5 years in Washington, D.C., first as a congressional intern and aide to Senator Tom Harkin, and subsequently was on the White House staff under President Barack Obama. And I'm going to try to keep my introductory comments very short because I think you'd probably rather hear from the candidates than hear from me. So with that, Lemmy, your turn.
Thank you, everyone. Also, thank you, Rotary West, for allowing us this opportunity and inviting us as guests. So really grateful for that. And also, welcome and thank you for being here to the other honorable guests, Scott and Tim. So look forward to engaging and sparking a conversation. So if you have any questions on my experience, we can talk post this. I'll be happy to give you more insight. So as Dana said in the intro, I spent 5 years in Washington, D.C., working, serving Cedar Rapidians and Iowans proudly, most specifically for Senator Harkin, where I learned a ton about how important public service is and how much people from stateside really do count on those that they have elected as their trustees to represent in the federal format. So that really inspired me to look deeper, to see what type of inspiration, what type of inclusive ideas, what type of innovative ideas that I could come up with to impact my community directly, which meant bringing all these skills that I learned and bringing them home and seeing what we could do to better them every day. So, you know, things are great in Cedar Rapids, but there are certainly some that I have been talking to, even at times myself, felt that a lot of our issues have been complacency. And that is because we aren't looking outside the box and thinking about what type of opportunities that we are providing, what kind of ideas we are coming up with. Everyone, there's a talk of creativity, but really very little has been done to show that anything creative has been done. So I'm with all those in mind, as I look ahead and plan for the future, I'm looking to identify some key issues that will help Cedar Rapids identify their full potential. And one of the biggest things that I found to be really discouraging for me is the college graduates and talented young people in Cedar Rapids, some of my peers, leaving the city in droves, which is really a bad turn for most of us. because the more young people that we do keep in here, the better and the more flourishing our economy is. The more involved young people are, the less older people have to work, the more that we can share the responsibility and the burden in keeping our communities safe and also growing in the right trend. So also economic development. A lot of people just don't feel like they're winning anymore. There is a whole lot of word that's going around that I've heard and even went through it through family and friends. People feel like they are working way too hard and really not reaping some of the benefits from such hard work that is going in. And that is an issue of one, complacency, and two, the lack of, not the lack, but we're not at full potential when we're not employing our young people. We're not creating, excuse me, we're not creating enough opportunity to keep the young here, to get them to, push us through to the next phase and make everybody's work a little easier. And the other thing is, there's an incredible passion for government and public service here in Cedar Rapids, and the way that the community comes together and works to resolve some of the issues and really spark some conversations, engage. All of that is inspiring, but I want to see a more inclusive and a more citizen engaging ideas and policies and involvement overall from everybody, not just young, but also old. And I look for those people who are seasoned like yourselves here, many of you, to be setting an example for a lot of us, like myself, who are just getting started. So those are some of the reasons why I am inspired to run and join this race. And once again, thank you for the opportunity of having me here.
Thank you, Lemmy. I particularly like the part about the older people not having to work as hard. Our next candidate is Scott Olson. Scott was born in Sheraton and moved to Cedar Rapids in 1961. He graduated as well from Washington High School and Iowa State University. He's lived in Cedar Rapids since moving here, with the exception of 2 years serving in the United States Army. Scott practiced architecture for over 20 years prior to becoming a commercial realtor with Skogman Realty in 1993. He's been involved with dozens of civic, community, and professional organizations and has served on the Cedar Rapids City Council since being elected in 2011. Scott is married to his wife Penny, and they have 2 children, Scott and Jill. Scott.
Thank you. Well, I'm really excited about the opportunity to share some thoughts and, of course, answer questions. And as you heard, one of the reasons that I am running is the fact that this city has been a wonderful place to call home and to have both an architectural business and a real estate practice. When I travel around the country getting CEUs, you sit down at a table with other people and you start talking about Cedar Rapids, and they can't believe what a wonderful city we have. And we have issues that we're going to talk about, I'm sure, during this discussion. But the important thing is that we have the ability to understand that we are a great city, but we have so much potential that is untapped and can be made a difference. We can make a difference. I've watched Lemmy grow up in my church, and his family resides in my district on the northwest side, and it's wonderful to see young people like Lemmy and the pastor joining us, and that sends a signal. How many cities have had races in mayoral candidates where there's 6, and all the districts have at least 3, and that sends a signal that people are excited about getting involved in public service and serving this great city. There will be a lot of cities in the country that will not believe that we had that many candidates. So I hope you enjoy the sign pollution that you'll see here over the next. My goal is to try and work to keep the city of Cedar Rapids as high as possible in the ranking. So I put a couple things on your sheet, because a lot of time on your tables, because there's a lot of people that don't realize all of our national rankings. We just got 2 recent ones a month ago. For the 3rd year in a row, Cedar Rapids was ranked the #1 city in the nation to raise a child. 3 years in a row. And number 2, we stepped up in the rankings as the 19th best run city in America out of the top 150 cities in the country, and the 11th for public service. And so we have a good base. We have a great team that's working, and we have a lot of different organizations that are making the difference. But once you get toward the top, it's hard to stay on top. You become complacent and not address issues that you're going to hear from a lot of candidates between now and November 7th. And what I hope to do is, being fortunate to have made my base here in Cedar Rapids for all these years, this chance for me to serve as mayor is my way of saying thank you to the citizens for my chance to do business and call this my home. And I intend to work hard to share that thanks by making this a better city. And again, we have to look forward to many of the things that were brought forward. I think I bring 3 things to the table: experience from different businesses that I've been involved in and helped create over the years, to service on over 50 boards and nonprofits, and I've held leadership positions in many of those boards, as well as companies and on the city council. And so I'm going to try and bring that experience to play to continue our city being near the top in all those rankings and things. But what's interesting to me is that the emails I get, and have for the last 6 years on the city council, are not necessarily about streets, flood protection, safety, and all of that. It's the day-to-day issues. And what gets lost in a city of our size is that we do not have an easy way for people to address things that face them every day in their neighborhood and on their way to work, or something that has impacted them. And so it's important that we continue as a city to have that response and the ability to answer people's questions and share with them how they solve that problem. We do have a lot of wonderful things happening in a lot of the areas with master plans that have now been established for streets. And now we're hearing complaints about all the construction. And so that's a positive sign, because we are making a difference. In the first 3.5 years of Paving for Progress, we've spent almost $60 million. In the 10 previous years to when that program started, we only spent $50 million and borrowed all that money and are paying interest on it. This is our sales tax that's going toward Paving for Progress, and it also pays for part of our flood protection. And so we are starting to see the benefits of these programs. A new comp plan, a new zoning plan's in place, a new master street plan is about done, a new bike trail plan was just completed, a new series of lifestyle issues have been addressed, and we have a very strong economic development department. And so we are making progress in all of those areas. But one of the things that happens is that we sometimes, as Lemmy mentioned, we let issues that step aside if we can't find a way to get everyone involved in what has been a rise of the city from 2008, as noted this week in the Wall Street Journal. We were featured for our recovery as a story that related to what happened in Houston and what happened in Florida and other places, in that we were able to turn a disaster and a tragedy into an opportunity and move the city forward at record pace. We are now used, and the last flood in 2016 was filmed by the Army Corps of Engineers, the barricades and the HESCO barriers, and by FEMA. And now Cedar Rapids is the case study they teach across the country for how a city can fight a flood. We are that case, and I'm proud of that. I'm proud of all the people that made that happen. And as mentioned, it was a community-wide effort. So my goal is, one thing that I look forward to is that I've now found, both as an architect and as a real estate professional, that I learned a lot at my training in 5 years at Iowa State. Because I was there, I learned how to solve problems. You start by listening, you build a team, you find creative solutions, you find the funding, and then you do it. And what I hope to do is to take that training and what I've been doing over the years as an architect and a real estate professional, take that skill set. And I've been using that on the City Council representing District 4, which is Northwest and part of Southwest Cedar Rapids, and try and put that together to solve other issues that we're hearing about. I've been doing some blogging on that, but it's affordable housing. It's issues around how do we get more inclusion in our community so that all do benefit from the success of a great city like Cedar Rapids. We still have flash flooding. We have questions on TIF. Who's getting TIF and why are we doing that? We have nuisance issues. And so those are some of the issues as I finish my 6-minute presentation. Thank you. Sorry.
Thank you, Scott. Our third candidate is Tim Pridgeon. Tim has lived in Cedar Rapids for 28 years. He worked at Iowa Illinois Gas and Electric from 1990 to 95, and he served as the pastor of Lifeline Ministries Church since founding it in 1991. Tim has also served as Lynn County Jail and Detention Center chaplain, and presently serves as a public safety chaplain to the Cedar Rapids Police Department. Tim is married to his wife of 37 years, Donna. They have 3 daughters, Elise, April, and Paige, who I will just add also all attended Washington High School.
Thank you so much. It is a pleasure to be here, and certainly God is good, and we thank you for inviting us on today. And first of all, Cedar Rapids is just an excellent city to live in. It's not a large city, but it's a very vibrant city. And Cedar Rapids has been a blessing to my wife and I and our 3 daughters. And you know, it's just a blessing to be here, and certainly God is in Cedar Rapids. And the reason I'm running for mayor of Cedar Rapids is because I feel inspired by God. And I'm not doing it on my own. I'm doing it because I feel that He wants me to. Now, when He inspired me to run, He didn't say that you would win or lose. But I do know that God wants a man that will honor Him as mayor. That can only make our city better. And then again, I want to say regarding Mayor Corbett, in my opinion, he has done a very good job with all the pressures that go along with that position. So once again, you know, we are very happy to be here, and the platform that I'm using is love, peace, and unity. And in my opinion, that is a heavenly foundation. Consider this. If we don't have the banner of love, peace, and unity reigning and ruling over our city, then we really don't have much at all. So, you know, God wants us to love one another and to be kind to one another, and He wants us to make a difference in a very positive way. And you know, being born in Chicago and coming to Cedar Rapids, there's something else that I really like about Cedar Rapids. It's not a segregated city. You can pretty much go anywhere you want to go at any point in time. That's not true with Chicago, St. Louis, other larger cities. You have to be very careful where you go. But Cedar Rapids is a place where people come together, people mix, and they get along. The fire department here is excellent. The police department here is excellent and doing a great job. The educational system here is fantastic. So it's almost like we're in a small heaven. And I really believe that God wants us to remember the 3 virtues: love, peace, and unity. And if we can continue on that foundation, this city will continue to be a bright spot in society. And I want to thank God for the 2 gentlemen that are running, Scott and Lamy. We really don't know who's going to win, but we do know one thing. Whoever wins, it's going to be God's will. I'm not sure. It may be me and it may not be. But anyway, we really thank you for allowing us to be here today, and we thank God for you. And you know, I was reading about Rotary and what it means. It means to serve, and that's the thing that we should continue to do. And that's what Christ did in Acts 10:38. God anointed Christ, and he went about doing good. And that should be our mission. And if I become mayor, you can believe that I'm going to do good. And my life mission has been to love others and to help those who are in need. So thank you for this opportunity, and if you would consider giving us a vote on November the 7th, we would appreciate it. God bless you, and thank you so much.
So we're going to take questions now, and we're going to rotate for responses. Fleming went first the first time, so we're just going to start with Scott on the first question, and we'll work our way this way. Tim will respond first on the next question, and we'll just keep working our way around this way. So I'll let Scott, you can field the first question. There's questions for the candidates.
Yes.
Yes, Scott, you mentioned about tips, and I know that's been a lot of concern in the public. I know the value of tips. There was a lot of discussion with even in the city council, and I believe you were part of that, on how many tips do we have to underwrite as a citizen supporting those taxes with a tip for businesses that would prosper here and provide jobs in Cedar Rapids.
That's a very good question on TIFs, and TIFs are a little misunderstood in a way, but in the state of Iowa, the city of Cedar Rapids only has 2 incentive programs it can use, and that's TIFs and urban revitalization zones. And a study that was recently done by David Swenson from ISU showed that Cedar Rapids ranked 7th lowest in the state for the use of TIFs. We have about 4.5% of our tax base that has some sort of a TIF on it, compared to, say, Coralville with all their redevelopment, where they're owning a lot of stuff. They're at about 46%, and I think they're near the top. And so we've been very frugal with our TIFs, but they're hard to understand. And basically what a TIF is, a developer would come forward with a project. He has to prove that he needs some city help to get that project done. It has to be analyzed, an agreement developed. Then he has to go, and we get to have a chance as a city council to make modifications to that agreement and to put restrictions on it, since they are asking for some of that taxpayer money. And then it gets voted. I have voted against a couple of those TIFs, mainly because they were taking tenants from other properties in Cedar Rapids and causing an unfair advantage in the real estate market. But the TIF then that are approved, then the developer has to build the building. He has to meet all the mandatory requirements, whether that's jobs or value. He has to pay his property taxes, and then once the taxes are paid, he gets a part of those taxes back. So with the exception of one TIF for Westdale, all of our TIFs are paid for after they pay their taxes. Do we have to use it? Yes. For certain types of projects. But I think we're seeing there is going to be a change, I feel, at the state legislative level to tighten that down because of cities like Coralville. Des Moines in 2016 issued $300 million worth of TIFs. $300 million. We were probably 25, if that, in TIF value of all of 16, 25, 30 million. So we're very frugal with it, but it's very hard to understand. And in my case, you know, I want to make sure that is it really needed, and you have to have proof, and they have to perform to get their money. So that's the TIF.
Question?
Yeah, so Tim or Lummi,
You can answer
would
that
like
question
to
too if you
respond
want.
to that question. You all certainly can respond, but you don't have to. If you'd rather field another one, that's fine too.
I do have a follow-up.
Yeah.
So, just for everybody who isn't familiar, what exactly is a TIF? Can you give us what it stands for?
A TIF is technically a tax increment finance district. And so what happens is either a separate building or an entire district becomes a TIF. And we've had several expire. As an example, out on the southwest side around the airport, we had a series of TIFs that reached their 20-year point, and there was money left, and that went back into the city coffers, and there's no TIF anymore. And so TIF is a tax incremental financing district. Is the only way the city has to gain some incentives to help a developer do a project in a blighted area or something new. Good question.
Yes.
I would love your perspective on what you kind of touched on a little bit. I think we do have great public service here, fire department, police department. However, certainly through the news and everything, there certainly has been an increase in gun violence in the city and in Iowa in general. But what are your views on public safety and how to increase that or maintain the safety that we currently have?
Well, again, the police department has done a very good job, and I happen to be a chaplain for the police department, and I work pretty close with them. And, I am a realist. As far as stopping 100% of all of the problems, that's probably not going to be done. But I would say if we as the citizens and the police department would continue to work together and talk among ourselves, we can continue in a very safe environment. And some say all of the trouble is coming out of Chicago. I don't think that's necessarily true. But, we as citizens, we need to talk, neighbors need to talk, and we need to get involved. Get involved, and when we see these young boys running around with their pants hanging down, we who are spiritual, we who are mature, I believe that we should say something to them. And so, again, what we need to do is just simply work together and love one another and live in peace. And through that process of unity, we can keep Cedar Rapids a very vibrant place to live. And again, Cedar Rapids is a great place, and we really don't have the violence that most cities have of this size. So it's a great place to be. And again, the victory is in talking together and communicating.
You want to answer that one? I want to say something if you...
Okay, I'll let you go.
Okay, thank you, Lemmy. Just a couple things that have really made a difference, and the pastor's right on. We have a very low crime rate, and our crime rate is actually dropping because of a couple new initiatives. One is called the PCAT, which is a special team now of police officers that was funded about a year ago by the City Council and through Public Safety, where it's a team of 4 that their initial mission and entire mission is looking at the hot spots where we're seeing more crime activity. Because you do have to, unless you have cooperation from the citizens, you have to catch them in the act. And so what they do, they're concentrating in those areas, staying in those areas until they catch the people. And what's giving a bad reputation to the citizens of all of our districts. We just recently had a shooting that's just, I think, about 8 blocks from our condo on the west side in an apartment complex. And it was several families and young people that determined that rather than have a rumble somewhere with a fist fight, they just travel back and forth from one side of the city to the other and shoot up that person's house and then drive back home, and they come around, but they've got to catch them. And so the police know who they are. They have to catch them in the act. And I think that once we get that message sent out, I think we'll see a great change. And I totally agree. We have a wonderful police department that is doing a yeoman's task of bringing our crime rates down. And that's some of the new rankings are because of our low crime rate. Okay, Lemmy's question. Yeah.
Also will respond to that question. Great question, by the way. Also, Scott and Pastor Tim, you both touched on it, but I want to go just a little further. It's easier to, point the finger and direct blame, but really it all comes down to taking responsibility and also, instead of tolerating, really understanding what's at the root of the problem. What we tend to overlook sometimes is what seems routine or seems normal to us, we just tolerate and let it go. We don't really take the time to understand it. The way that you understand it is you have to have the tough conversations. If if it is not your area of expertise, or if you're just not comfortable in making the approach, what we really have to do is be able to recognize that as responsible adults and say, okay, this is not ordinary, this is not normal, and so we have to approach it that way. Be tough about it, and we have great public servants all over the city here, and the only way their job becomes easier and effective is that, as Scott mentioned, taking citizens cooperating, but also taking part and making yourselves part of the equation, as the pastor mentioned, being involved. And you'd be surprised at that little bit of effort and how far it can go.
One of the things that we have tried to do the last 4 or 5 years right over here, and I believe it's Willington Heights, Redmond Park, we have had an event like 2 weeks before school, and it's called Love Thy Neighbor. So a lot of the young people who are troubled, if we will, take time to love them and help them to see that we really care, it makes a difference. And that's what I mean by love, peace, and unity. And that's the banner that we have over our city, and that's the banner that we want to keep. And if we can do that, Cedar Rapids will continue to be a great and vibrant city to live in.
All right. Anybody questions for me?
In 2008, the flood that we experienced was our third or fourth worst natural disaster in the United States. And since then, that's been superseded. From that time till now, we've been unable to get the funding that is necessary to complete our flood protection. And it seems now even more unlikely that the federal government will be willing or able to fund that flood protection. So I wonder how you all see financing that, and do we have the local resources to do that? We've tapped into our sales tax growth, and we've done other things to supplement the financing that is available, but we're going to need more. So how do we get that?
Great question, Robin. Yeah, unfortunately, disasters and things of the climate do happen without us accounting for it, or sometimes just being underprepared. The biggest issue that I see with not securing those federal fundings are, I think, our city, when the federal appraisers come in order to consider who do we give and how do we give this money that's available for recovery, and when they take everything into account, they look at how much the city is worth, and they also have questions on, and also to try to determine what factors really go into how do we rebuild it. Is it worth rebuilding? And those questions get asked. And one thing with Cedar Rapids that I have read about and learned about just in behind the scenes, the city isn't appraised very high. So it's up to all of us who live in the city and want to make it great to be able to invest in it and make sure that it holds its value and then some. And so the more that we have developed in our downtown, the more that we have developed in the areas that will get heavily impacted, the more that adds to the value of the city, the more that those that federal money, those grants that are available will consider the city. And if we have tapped out on all other resources, the next option is really something that not too many look into, and that is the public option. Us publicly, collectively getting together and financing it. So having that, I think, as a safety net, and also as an alternative option, could be something that gives everybody a little piece of the pie there. The more that we have at stake, the more likely that we are to see it through and make sure that all of the money that comes in, whether it's through federal grants or even publicly financed, that the things get done the right way the first time.
Any more questions?
I want to add to that one. I think that's an excellent question relating to the federal funding because, as you see, the systems are overloaded and the FEMA's in debt. And so the chances of us getting our $78 million from the federal government are getting slimmer and slimmer. There's still a chance, but it's not necessarily there. We currently, the flood protection program over the next 20 years, from what we have constructing right next to us here all the way to time check, is $530 million with inflation. We currently have identified through the state bill $295 million. And we're getting that from increases in sales tax. So anybody that shops in Cedar Rapids is helping pay for our flood protection because 30% of our sales tax money comes from people that live outside the city. So that's $295 million. The federal money is 78. If we were to get that money, we would speed up the time frame and have the wall built faster. But it's still not going to get us, and that reduces inflation, still not going to get us to $500 million or $530. The city has a plan in place, 3 different options to fund it, and it varies from a flood district where it's like our downtown district. We have SMIDs. Many cities have created a flood district, so everybody that's impacted by the wall in the 100-year floodplain might have a part of their property tax increase that would go toward the flood wall, because once that flood wall is done, their flood insurance is gone. So they save more money in paying every year for flood insurance. They'd rather pay maybe an extra $1 per thousand of tax. We could also add back a sales tax, additional sales tax, or we can bond for that. The city manager and the finance director have 3 plans in place to fund the gap. They've not been presented because if we tell the federal government we have a plan, the chances of us getting our federal money are pretty slim. And so we're waiting on the appropriations to try and find out, are we going to get money? Could be 20 million, could be 50 million, and then hopefully get as much as possible, and then we'll determine that best way to close the gap. The flood wall system, I'll reassure you, our plan is adopted by the Corps of Engineers. It's budgeted out. We know what we need to spend. We know where it's going to go, and we know how to fund it. We just need to find that best way if we do not get our federal money. So that's why you're seeing development occurring, because the people that are developing along the river, both being flood-proofing their buildings, CRST has a flood wall in it, and the new project in Time Check, we have the amphitheater's a flood wall. We're getting pieces done, and so we're going to see what a flood wall looks like here in just about another month. So it's going to be quite a change. One more question?
People will live in this property. One more question with maybe a 60-second response.
Yes, short response.
Or unless you want to take a 60-second wrap.
Yeah.
I'll ask what should be a short question. So where do each of you stand, or what are your thoughts in terms of the conversion of one-way streets to two-way streets in downtown?
60 seconds.
60 seconds.
Personally, I like the two-way streets because it gives more movement, and I think it makes it faster to get where you're going. That's my own opinion.
I personally am in favor of the one-way street. Because I think it just directs the flow of traffic in different directions a lot more smoother than the two-way. I have found it hard for me to adjust to Second Avenue being a two-way. So I didn't think there was that big of a problem with the one-way to begin with, but now that it's a two-way, it's definitely been an added inconvenience to my commute.
This has been, the one-way to two-way has been studied for 30 years. And our traffic counts have shown, and the new studies about how you make a city more pedestrian-friendly and slow down traffic is that conversion. It's called putting a street on a street diet. And so it is going to continue. The biggest frustration is the change and all that is occurring taking so long. And that's partially funding and partially wanting to do it in phases because of the railroads. And so it is going to happen, and the infrastructure committee is pushing to have it all done by 2018, maybe a little bit into 2019. And when you see the crossing arms go up on the avenues from 1st Avenue to 5th Avenue over the next 2 years, we will have, first time in history, a quiet zone, where we've already signed the agreement with the railroad, no more train horns downtown. And so it's all part of the street diets, bicycle lanes, pedestrian friendly. We don't have the traffic counts to justify one way. And I just want to get it over with, because change is tough for everybody, young and old. And we just need to get it done.
I want to thank our candidates today for being here. I'm going to just address real quick the sign pollution comment that was made. If you remember a year ago when we had a national decision to make, nobody put a yard sign out. So I'm looking forward to the sign pollution, because when you didn't have the yard signs, nobody was proud of the choices they had to make. I think this year we have a lot of really, really good candidates. Everybody should be proud and passionate about the people that are running for mayor of our town. So that's my comment. So thank you for being here today. If there's nothing else,